Next we're going to texture the palm tree. Let's first of all switch back to solid mode and have a look at the palm tree. It consists of 3 objects: the trunk, the coconuts, and the leaves. Let's have a closer look at the trunk. I have marked a seam in red down here. So these are the edges. These will be the edges of the UV map. And we have to be careful how we handle this edge. I've opened the UV map in Inkscape. Here on the top it corresponds to the top of the trunk, and here on the bottom it corresponds to the bottom. The left side and the right side correspond to the seam. So in other words, we have to make sure that on the left side and the right side there is not too much difference. Let's first of all create a new layer, UV map, and another layer, texture. And let's select this UV map layer and press Ctrl X and paste it into the UV map layer, Ctrl Alt V, and lock the layer. Then let's draw a rectangle. I would like my rectangle to be filled with a gradient. And I want my gradient to run from bottom to top. Let's make the bottom color green and the top color fully opaque and yellow. Let's save it. And let's move this thing down, this handle downwards, so that only the lowermost part of the palm tree will be green. And then let's save it again and let's export. Now let's see what the texture looks like in Blender. Let's move to rendered shading, and it looks pretty cool. But if we look closely at our seam line, we see that here it's pretty obvious that there's a seam line. So let's go back to Inkscape to see if we can fix that. So first of all, let's make this layer a little bit transparent, and here we have our issue. So let's move our resize the square a little bit and create another square which will have the same color as the top part. And here let's change the direction of the gradient so that it's a bit more in line with the direction of the seam. And let's change the opacity back to 100% and export this as well. Export this picture and see if the result is any better. Back in Blender, we can click on this icon to reload the current image. And yeah, it's a bit less obvious that there's a seam line, but if I want to work harder on this, I can. Let's try a bit more. And here we see that the seam line is basically gone. Next, let's draw the texture for the coconuts. Switching back to solid view and switching to edit mode. I see that I've put the seams on the opposite side. The seams are nice and well hidden, so we don't really have to worry about these seams. Now I've opened the coconut texture map in Inkscape and I've added the UV map to a UV map layer and added a texture layer. And to draw the texture, we simply draw a rectangle, color it brown, and click on Filters, Textures, Bark, and it's as simple as that. Let's save and export the UV map. And next we will draw the texture on the leaves. Here I've opened the texture maps in Inkscape. I'm going to draw two rectangles, one for the top leaf and one for the bottom leaf. And I'm going to color them both green for now. Let's open the layer editor and let's make the texture layer a little bit opaque, a little bit transparent, excuse me. And let's add a gradient, a circular gradient to the fill. We want the outer handle to be green and fully opaque, and the inner handle to be rather yellowy. But let's make it a bit smaller. And let's do the same for the lower leaf. Next, let's draw a piece of the texture for the vein of the leaf. Let's remove all the transparency. So let's add a gradient here that is yellow on the left side and dark green on the right. And let's do the same for the bottom. Let's also modify these gradients to make that a bit brighter. And now let's select the two objects on the top surface of the leaf and add the filter Rough and Glossy. And on the bottom, let's add the filter Rough Paper. So let's have a look at how it looks like in Blender. In texture mode, it looks relatively cool. And if I go to render mode,